In the United States, 22.3% of women have experienced some form of severe physical violence. That means roughly 1 in 4 women have experienced intimate partner violence in the United States during their lifetime. If gone unaddressed, IPV can lead to poor health. It can lead to post-traumatic stress symptoms, poor quality of life, even death. To prevent women's IPV victimization, it's important for us to understand the risk and protective factors that lead to IPV. In this research, my colleagues and I examined how social capital and neighborhood characteristics might affect women's IPV victimization. To understand the continuum of protective factors experienced by women across individual and neighborhood systems, the field must take a holistic look at how these factors relate to one another and how they interact to either escalate or buffer against IPV. Prior to this study, the bulk of IPV research on protective factors devoted itself to examining either individual-level social support or neighborhood characteristics. Research rarely considered the synergistic relationship between individual and neighborhood-level factors to inform community-based interventions. To take the research one step further, we set out to examine how multiple dimensions of social capital, including instrumental social support, social participation, and collective efficacy, operate with neighborhood characteristics to affect women's risk of IPV. Before we dive into the multiple dimensions of social capital, we must first understand how neighborhood factors into the equation. Neighborhood environments have a measurable impact on rates of IPV, and there are neighborhood disadvantages that can be particularly powerful, such as high unemployment rates, high poverty levels, and high rates of public assistance. Together, these are called concentrated disadvantage. Concentrated disadvantage increases the risk of community violence and can create conditions that socially isolate community members. Among women, this social isolation can diminish the opportunity for building social support that could provide outlets for stress relief, resources for help-seeking victims, and opportunities to leave violent relationships. However, challenges in the neighborhood environment may be buffered by social capital. In our research, social capital consists of 3 parts. First, whether the study participants have a safety net of people. Second, whether they were involved in community activities. And third, whether they have a sense of collective efficacy, which is how much their neighbors agree on what constitutes acceptable behaviors and reinforce those behaviors within the community. Using this base of knowledge, we asked 2 important research questions to move the conversation forward. Does concentrated disadvantage predict women's IPV victimization? And does social capital buffer the effect of neighborhood environment on IPV victimization among women? To tackle our research questions, we analyzed the Fragile Families and Child Wellbeing Study, which involved nearly 5,000 families across 16 US cities over 15 years and 5 rounds of data collection. Particularly, we looked at over 1,800 mothers in the study who answered all of the questions relevant to our study in Wave 3. We found that concentrated disadvantage, social and physical neighborhood disorder, and community violence together significantly predicted increased rates of IPV victimization. Overall, our study provided 3 key takeaways. First, in communities with greater concentrated disadvantage, women actually reported lower rates of intimate partner violence. This finding departs from previous research, reporting that higher levels of victimization are found in communities with higher levels of concentrated disadvantage. Our departure from other studies suggests that it may not be poverty itself that increases the risk of IPV, but rather other community aspects that enhance women's risk. Second, we found that women with greater social capital were less likely to report intimate partner violence. This finding demonstrates the protective effects of social capital in multiple settings, such as social support, community involvement, and collective efficacy. Finally, we found that the protective effects of social capital operated differently depending on the level of community violence in the neighborhood. Women exposed to violence in their communities were less likely to benefit from the protective effects of social capital compared to women who did not witness or experience community violence. These findings drive home the need for more robust community-based care. No matter your position in your neighborhood, you have a role to play in addressing intimate partner violence. For IPV advocates, partnerships to improve physical neighborhood conditions should be a priority. Resident-led efforts to create parks, urban farms, community gardens, or playgrounds can create a sense of safety and attachment to the neighborhood. For social workers, engaging women to identify barriers to social safety nets should be a priority. For public health workers, campaigns to shift social norms that support anti-violence should be prioritized. For community agencies, facilitating community connection to enhance neighborhood cohesion should be a priority. Lastly, for emergency workers responding to community violence, there's a window of opportunity to deliver trauma-informed IPV education, screening, and referral with women who witness or are directly involved in the violent incident. In this study, we set out to identify protective factors across individual and neighborhood systems to buffer the unhealthy effects of neighborhood characteristics on intimate partner violence. Overall, we hope you take away the importance of taking a more holistic approach to thinking about protective factors as they relate to intimate partner violence, particularly for women. We'd be interested to hear about how this study resonates with your own work. If you have any questions or you want to reach out to me for further discussion, please do. You'll find my contact information below and more information on the study in the notes. Thanks so much, everyone.